Hey guys, welcome to Brotherhood Forged.
I'm Joey, and this is my buddy Paul.
We're just two normal guys chasing Jesus and trying to lead our families as well as we can.
We started this to build a place for real talk, real growth, and real brotherhood.
If you're about faith, leadership, and showing up when it's tough, then you're definitely in the right spot.
Proverbs 27:17, it says, as iron sharpens iron, one man sharpens another. That's our heartbeat.
We're here to sharpen each other and have some fun while we do it.
If you like what you hear, hit that share button or just leave us a review. It helps way more than you know.
We appreciate you. Let's get into it.
Father, thank you for this moment and the gift of marriage. Use this episode to strengthen both husbands and wives. Help us lead with love and serve with humility and stay rooted in you. Let every word point back to you and your truth. In Jesus' name, amen.
All right, let's hop into the main topic for today. This one could take us a lot of places, and I'm excited to see where it goes for future episodes as well. How has your view of marriage changed from when you first got married, and how are you still trying to grow today?
Paul, how has my view of marriage changed from when I first got married? That's kind of comical for me. No disrespect to my parents, but they were married 5 times each. Now, they're both passed away. They did stick with their 5th spouse, hey, there was some success in the end. So I can't really say I had a strong role model as far as how to do marriage right. Not that they didn't do anything right, but I don't have a great answer for that. So we said we're going to be authentic. I'm not going to bring up something that's not true. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, to piggyback off that, man, I think that's one thing I had to learn over time is that your example isn't the only example. So like mine and Amber's examples, we saw very different examples of a marriage. And part of our responsibility in that marriage is to understand that what the other person brings to it as well. And there's probably some stuff that we have to help them get through or grow through, or the same for us. It's no one will ever see a perfect example. So it's also understanding where is your spouse at, where are they coming into this at, and where do you guys want it to go from there. The marriage that I saw from my parents, it was a little different. I felt the responsibility to build off the foundation that they had given me. But in that same sense, when we first got married, I wasn't fully sure what it looked like or what it would require or what exactly I wanted from it. We were so young. We already had a baby. I was back in school to get my master's degree. Amber was back in school at the same time. So it's like, I don't think we knew what it would require and what we needed to potentially work on. It was just like, all right, well, we're married. And I think that's a thing we see often is people get so excited for the wedding, commit to the wedding, and we don't always realize we also have to commit to the marriage and what that looks like.
I had no clue. And it showed in my marriage early on because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to act. I didn't know all of the things. Now, my wife had a fantastic example. Her parents, they're still both living, but they are a great example, even when they bicker, which everybody bickers. It's funny because it's so harmless. Still tell him what to do, and he'll be like, yes, dear. And I'm like, yeah, I need to learn that, right? I need to learn those skills. But yeah, she had a great example. And I think I've shared this on Larry's podcast as well. She was kind of terrified to marry me because I come from a completely different, we'll call it structure, used very loosely. 32, almost 33 years later, through lots of bumps in the road, we're still grinding it out.
That's a whole other piece of it right there too, man. It's important to be patient, encouraging, and supportive of each other's growth. And she was that for you because, like you said, man, you didn't see the same structure or foundation that she had. So it'd be really unfair for her to hold you to the standard that she saw when you didn't see that. So it's like really knowing where your spouse is at and encouraging through that process as well. The story about your in-laws reminds me of Amber's grandparents, man. They could be the same way. They're both passed now. They're incredible people. But he would always joke. He's like, I just drive the car and pay the bills. Like, so I think you get to a point in marriage when you're at an older stage like that. It's like, I think that it's beautiful because they don't lose sight of things. They've been committed to each other for so long. Whereas anybody else in different journeys, I think we can still get too caught up on the little things and always have to remind ourselves, is what I'm upset with right now, does it actually matter for our love and connection in our marriage? And I think oftentimes it doesn't, but we get so worked up in it and we can get defensive. And it's like, where do I need to continue to learn to check myself and not get defensive too?
Yeah, that what you described to your grandparents sounds exactly like my in-laws, Bob and Evelyn. He would probably say something very similar, but yeah, wonderful role models. And what you said about how often we argue or bicker or get in disagreements, how often is it something that is absolutely stupid? It has no bearing on your relationship. It really doesn't matter. And there's an area that I have definitely need to work on more, but I've done a lot better. Is there are times where before it was pride. I would argue if I didn't agree with something. Not that she was wrong. I would always say have to be right.
Mm,
And I've learned there's many times now that I just, yes, dear, or just don't say anything at all because it doesn't matter. It
yeah.
doesn't matter who's right so often. If it's going to cause a fight or cause a rift in the marriage, just make that day harder. It's just not worth it.
There's a lot of stuff, and I don't remember exactly where I learned read it or heard it from, but it talks about there's actually, I mean, obviously there's God is in our marriage too, but there's you, there's your wife, and there's your marriage, and then there's God there too. But it's like, how often do we have to let go of, like you said, like I don't have to be right for me, but I have to be right for the marriage. And that takes a lot of humility to step back and say, is it more important for me to feel right, or is it more important for this to be right for my marriage?
As I said, we always kind of go back to the dad edge. We both went through that marriage course, 8 weeks long. I learned so much during that, but pivotal growth in my marriage came from that course and what I've learned over the last 3 years.
I agree, man. I think it really affirmed to me the stuff that we were learning. It's not like earth shattering or anything crazy like that. It's just a different intentionality to stay plugged into these things. And like you talked about, the little things, man, consistent communication every single day, checking in with each other, making sure that where we want to be and not where we think we want to be, to actually know that we're on that same page that we wrote together, opposed to just kind of going down our own direction and losing sight of that big piece of the marriage.
Yeah, communication is key. If I had to say one of the most, if not the most important thing in a successful marriage is communicating with your spouse, making sure you're on the same page, not making assumptions. Assumptions are deadly.
That leads into another, so I looked at a list of, kind of common misconceptions for newlyweds, and that leads into one that I think that we've both learned from the hard way, assuming that my spouse knows what I want or need without telling them, just assuming.
Anytime you think they know what you're thinking or you think they should act a certain way, it's going to cause a problem. It took me 30 years to learn that. You might assume that she had time to do the dishes or something because she works from home. That's a really bad idea
Mhm.
because you don't know what's going on. You don't know what that other person, whether it's your spouse or someone else, is going through. Assumptions are just so dangerous, and it goes both ways, right?
I think what you're getting at too, man, is it just sets us up for resentment. So how can they know what we expect or what we're hoping they will do during the day, or communicate to us without us accurately telling them like, hey, this is something that I hope we can get to. I hope that we can work to. I hope we can get this done today, or we should try to get this done today. Without saying that stuff, we're just having that conversation in our head of like, when I get home today, I hope things look like this, or our wives can say the same thing, right? And it doesn't happen because life happens. They're busy, they're working, whatever it may be. So we've just created this whole dialogue in our own head that we could have had with them, and there's already created resentment walking through the door. It's like, I don't know why that one takes us all such a hard time to learn, or such a long time to learn, because it seems like something so easy, but it can also be so hard. I think what really it comes down to is communicating exactly what you want and what you need. And that can be scary because that can be a difficult conversation.
And it all boils down to what we just spoke about, communication. It's really is simple, not easy. Going off of that, you always hear another misconception I was thinking about. Marriage should always be easy or should feel easy. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's days, right? There are days where it feels easy. There are days where we're super aligned and everything's going great. It's beautiful weather outside. We're hanging out. We're having a good time. And there's also days where you both work full time. You have young kids. You have different obligations. You have church. You have different things that you have to do. And I think it comes back to the communication piece of it. Like, we all wear so many different hats and have so many different responsibilities. But it's funny to think that it should always feel easy when we know the reality is it won't. So why do we get so caught up on the days when it doesn't?
Half the time, I'd say at least half the time, it's not easy and it doesn't feel easy. Uh, we made a commitment. I mean, so many people take the easy way out, and that's divorce. And I'm going to kind of do a little segue here. My wife and I, yeah, we've had definitely some ups and downs in our marriage, as everybody has, but we have never mentioned the word divorce. Almost 33 years. It's just not an option for either of us. I owe her a lot of credit to us still being together because I've been a jerk at times in our marriage, and I've not always been the best husband for sure. Not that she's always been perfect. Yeah, no, dear, you're not always mostly perfect, but you make a commitment and you to just work through it. There are days you have hard times at work, you work through those. You have hard times in friendships, you work through those. So why not the second most important relationship, first being with God? Why not working through those? Why not doing the hard stuff and putting in the work? Why not?
Yeah, I agree, man. I think when you have that assurance that this person is committed to me and committed to our marriage, it can make the hard days feel a little easier because you know, instead of having that dragged over your head, like, oh man, if I slip up or if we have another bad day, then they may entertain leaving or calling this quits. Like that's a lot of pressure to have on your head, man, because none of us are perfect. This is not going to be easy. There's going to be difficult times. And those are the times where you really have to double down and try to work together and stay stronger to really get to where you're going to go, opposed to being like, you know what? There's always this thought in the back of my mind that I could just leave. To me, it just feels like that can really set you up for a lot more that, like we talked about earlier, resentment and just fear. And I don't think fear is a good place to be in marriage.
Totally agree.
Another common misconception is something that I've always kind of dealt with myself too is that marriage will fix my personal issues. And I think to an extent, what that looks like is we all have our own things that we need to work on for ourselves and for our marriage. And if we're not continuing to audit and evaluate where we are, and if we ignore the things that we need to check in on, then that will pour over into our marriage. But it can't be the flip side always where our marriage will heal those things. I know it's because there's certain things that our marriage just can't heal that we've gone through.
Yeah, our spouse can't fix us. We can't fix them. I think that's really important. People often get into relationships thinking, well, I really like this person, but I can change this or I can fix this with them. And it just doesn't work that way. We have to deal with things in our own way.
So and when we're talking about things that we have the responsibility to heal of our own, the same is for our spouse too, right? Like we can't fix that out of them. So we have to be the passenger in the car where they're driving, and we have to be there patiently and patiently waiting and supportive along the process. Because think about this, if we try to take control of that, we grab that steering wheel, what's gonna happen? The outcome's not gonna be what we want it to be. So it's almost a point of like I have to take a step back and I have to be encouraging and supportive without controlling them or telling them what they have to do. And we have to kind of expect the same back from them. We can't expect them to fix our stuff if we're not willing to at least get behind the wheel and start driving as well.
That's a fact. Support is the really the key word you said there. We have to be there to support one another, give advice, but we can't do it for them and they can't do it for us.
How do you feel about this next misconception that marriage should be a 50-50 split?
That's kind of funny. I used to think that way. Well, I should do this part and she should do this part, or this amount. Sometimes it's 100-0.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's 90-10. But in a marriage, you have to be willing to pick up the slack when you need it to, and they have to be able to pick up the slack. I've also heard it's 100-100, but that math doesn't add for me. I'm kind of a math guy. So yeah, 50-50 is a joke. It's almost like Paul when people say you should have balance in work in your marriage or work and home. There is no balance. There's no 50-50 in anything. There are times you're going to have to give more effort into one area than another. It works the same way in marriage. Sometimes
Mhm.
you're going to give it all, and sometimes they're going to give none. Let's give you an example. When I was sick, I had cancer, and my wife took care of me. She was 99-1, right? And then there was times when she had surgeries, and I was taking care of her. 99-1. That's what a marriage is. It's picking up the slack when you need to.
For the marriage too, and like you said, man, there will be times where it goes back and forth, and it's not about keeping score. It's not about I did this, so you have to do this, because that just leads us all to resentment, which we've all probably experienced that as well. Like there was times in the Dad Edge again where we've talked about. There's a guy that brought up this great topic or this great concept, checking in with your spouse at the end of the day or the end of the week and being like, "Hey, I had a really bad day today. I got like 60% in my tank," and they're like, "Oh, you know what? I had a great day. I got like 90%. Let me pick up a little bit more." But it's back to
Yeah.
communication. It's back with checking in and not checking score, which can be so hard at times, but something we always have to remind ourselves. It's not a me versus you. It's a we thing. Gottman is an incredible resource, but he talks about always trying to find ways to shift that me to we in marriage, and really understanding that the marriage itself is the piece that we really have to protect, opposed to our own ego.
For years, I did keep score. I'm sure most people, honestly, if you think about it, we hear it on our calls. We hear it on the calls all the time in the alliance. Guys are keeping score and they're mad because they're like, well, I'm working, I'm doing this, and she's only doing this, but you can't do that.
Hmm.
You're not gonna stay married probably. Best case scenario doing that, you're not gonna have a happy marriage. because you can't keep score. And my wife and I have had conversations around this, and we don't keep score. I mean, there are times, of course, you're like, well, I wish you would have done that because we are human, but
Mhm.
keeping score is definitely detrimental to any marriage. Lesson learned from a guy who's been at it for 33 years almost. Don't keep score.
It's incredible wisdom, man. It's the last piece that I want to say to that is Eric Wooten. He's an author. He's got a YouTube channel, Relation Shots. This is something that really helped me when we were going through. Amber used to commute an hour each way to work, so she was gone a lot more
Wow.
than I was. I had a lot more responsibility at home because I was home more. I was more present. The way he said this helped me frame my mindset. It's the person with the greater capacity in the marriage has the greater responsibility. So at times we're going to find ourselves with that greater capacity to do certain things. And instead of being resentful about it, it's a matter of, okay, this is something I need to step into. So I have the greater responsibility for it. That can be time management. That can be your faith. That can be cooking meals, who's doing the laundry, whatever it may be. I think it comes down to the communication of where are your strengths? Where are the things that you have more capacity to do that I just don't? And how can we work together to get to where we want to go?
That's really important. My wife has strengths like she's great at planning things. She's great at taking care of others. So many things. If you sit back and you really think about what your spouse is good at or how they contribute to the marriage, it's going to change your outlook. But it's so easy to focus on the negative or maybe what they don't do well. But think about it. I'm sure you don't do some things well also. So I think that's real important, Paul, that you said that. I think that's a great point and something that I had to learn myself.
The magic of thinking big goes back to the same thing, man. And we taught you hear this several different ways. What you think about grows. So if you're going to sit there and you're going to look at ways to not be grateful or appreciative of your spouse, that's gonna multiply by the day. And then before you know it, man, you're just gonna be sitting there only picking out the things that you don't like or the things that you wish they'd change. But you've missed so many of the beautiful things that they do well. Like, what if they're a great mother? They're obviously more motherly than we are, right? So they're doing these things that we're just not designed to do. But if we miss
Right.
appreciating them for that, we're really, what's the saying? You miss the forest for the trees.
I think that's a good topic there.
We had a lot of good stuff there, man. So I think if we were to put a bow on this all together, if you could go back to young Joey and find yourself when you're getting married, or even just some advice to people that are just starting their marriage, what are some things that you wish that you knew, or some things that you can give back?
I'd say first, handle conflict with humility, not heat. Meaning by that, how you respond. Don't react. And we talk about that a lot in the group as well. Think about what you're going to say. You don't need to respond to her in a negative way, whether that's a harsh tone or defensive. How you talk to your spouse is so important, and how they talk to you is important as well. But just the power of the tongue is can be a wonderful thing, but it can also be the most nasty weapon that can be used, and it can definitely destroy a marriage.
I like how that was humility and not heat, because we can all picture that, right? The heat of like, is my response going to add gasoline to this fire, or am I going to try to come in here and neutralize it and get us in a safe environment? The same can be said, like you said, the way that we talk to each other. It's a lot about what are you willing to tolerate, and how are you setting boundaries? Are you talking about, hey, when you talk to me this way, this is how I feel, or when I talk to you this way, this is how you feel, and really working together to iron out those things that can be the heat to the fire opposed to helping it.
It has to be a conscious effort. At least it does still for me. These things that we're sharing don't necessarily come easy. Now, they do get easier the more we do them. They become ingrained in us. I definitely respond a lot more than I react these days, but there's times I catch myself and I'm like, oh, that was bad. And
Mhm.
what do? I apologize. Admit when I'm wrong.
No, I said that's another thing, is that it's not going to happen every single day. It's not going to be perfect. But you said, like we said there, about the repair of it, man, because we are going to make mistakes. But it's coming back to it with that humility of, hey, you know what, I shouldn't have done that, and this isn't how we agreed to talk to each other, and this is something I'm going to work on. And if you ask for that accountability, you have to always make sure not to check your response there as well. And what you said was big, man, too, because we talk a lot about controlling the controllables, and that's our response. We can control our response and not a reaction. We can't control theirs.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you show up? How do you respond based off what you can control? And that decision not to put more heat there is a big one.
Yeah. Control the controllables. That's a whole nother episode, right?
Oh yeah, dude, we could go hours on that one.
So how
I
about
think
you?
approach conversations, approach the marriage, approach the week. Keep being curious about your spouse. I think there's this big thing. several different ways we've heard this, where we continue to grow into different versions of ourselves. And if we're not continuing to stay curious about each other and curious about our relationship and our friendship, then we could potentially drift apart. And not meaning so, you could just get busy with life and just drift apart and not realize how much your spouse has grown. So stay plugged into that and remember that as you go through that, your spouse is not your enemy, they're your teammate. And when you go through that and have those conversations with curiosity of how they're feeling, what they're looking forward to, what goals they have, what dreams they have, you'll just continue to build your team camaraderie, and more importantly, your friendship. And I think that really opens up a lot of possibilities.
And when you see those changes in your spouse and you see them putting in the effort, you need to acknowledge those things. You need to reinforce that when you're seeing positive behavior or at least effort. I think it's so easy to get wrapped up in yourself, even in when you're married, even when you're married. It's so easy just to be focused on you, but you need to acknowledge when they're making those efforts.
The behaviors or the responses, if they're doing things that you guys have talked about improving on, and you're not, I don't want to say rewarding is kind of a bad way, right? But acknowledging it, then it's not going to continue. So if you're looking at something, if Amber comes to me and says, hey, can you work on this? Or we agree that I'm going to work on this, but then I make those efforts and I don't see anything in return, then I'm going to assume it doesn't work. We've talked about assuming is not great, right? So it's
Right.
check back in on that, but you got to really acknowledge the positive stuff. Even to segue too much, parenting, the power of positive parenting. Highlight the positives. Don't focus on the negatives. I think that's a good one there to remind ourselves of always too.
Yeah, focusing on the positives rather than negatives. We can go on that, but I won't. But yeah,
Yep.
that's super important.
Yep.
I
You got
I
another
think
one?
yeah, I have another one. So dream and plan your future together.
Mm,
So obviously, Paul, you and I are in a little different stages of life, being that I'm mid 50s and you're mid 30s, but still, now we have a vision. We have a vision for what we want when we retire, and we're working towards that. It's not always been the case. Before, for most of our marriage, I just kind of went through the motions of working every day and just not really thinking about the future. But we have a similar vision, and that would be to retire on a lake in the mountains, or, with trees around. We kind of we know what we want, and we're both actively pursuing that right now. We have dreams that are aligned. And I think even if you have different things that you want, you need to be able to come together on something that, you both are after. And Bobby
mhm.
and I, we're excited about our future. We're excited about retiring one day. Don't know exactly what that looks like right now because tomorrow could bring anything really. It could be great. It could be amazing. It could be a health challenge. It could be a windfall of money. You just don't know.
Mhm.
But planning that future together and being on the same page is hugely important.
Yeah, those common goals, common visions coming together, understanding each other's inputs and what's important to them too. You say that, and I picture Tennessee.
We love
Your
Tennessee.
description was Tennessee, man.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. But you're right though. You can't just go to it and be like, "This is what I want to do when I retire," and miss the other half of the equation, which is your spouse. It's like, well, what do you want to do when you retire? It's like you have to really come together with each other's input and what's important to each other.
Yeah. Early in marriage, I was just so selfish. I remember I always thought about what I wanted to do. And this year it's been different for me. I love to play golf, but my focus is different. My goals are different. I'm not nearly as selfish as I used to be. I still love to play golf, but I'd rather be hanging out with her. We went to see a movie this weekend. I stayed up later, way later than normal. But you know what we did together? I'll still play golf here and there, but it's not even a focus. I want to be with her. And that's my priority. After God, that's my priority.
I love that, man. I think too often our priorities can change. And someone in the dad actually said, you can't have priority. And it's like, because we try to multitask too much of those. And you're right. Like you had golf, you had your marriage, you had your faith, but it's like, okay, how do I really narrow these down to what really is important to me? And that
Yeah.
could be a whole different conversation for different podcasts as well. One more to go with, man, is assume the best each day. And I think, obviously different relationships can mean different things, right? So if anybody's in a relationship that's threatening or dangerous or hurtful, like then yeah, maybe not assume the best there and do what you need to do with your family and supports to get yourself to where you need to be. But for the day to day stuff, man, assume the best in that we have bad days. Things happen at work, and when we come through that door, what happened during that day isn't a reflection of us, our spouse, or our marriage. And it's assuming the best in each other to not think if my spouse comes home upset, that means I didn't do something or they're mad at me. It's like, no, that can be a lot of things, right? They could have had a bad drive home. They could have had a bad day. So don't assume that that's a reflection of you or your marriage. And then kind of a last little piece. You got anything you want to add to that part?
No, that's good. That's good. Keep on rolling.
I would say a last little piece, and it's kind of another part, is keep being creative with each other. And it's kind of like your vision for retirement stuff, man. Like talks about make sure you date each other, and easier said than done, because especially depending where you're at with the season of life and the season of parenting, you could have very limited time for that. And I don't want to say that you would neglect it or not make it important, but you can get creative. A plan A could be we go to Outback, we go to a movie, we do this, we do that. But a plan B could be we have family night, our kids fall asleep during the movie, then her and I go to the next room and we have a conversation or we watch a different movie together. So it's like, don't think that things always have to look a certain way. Be creative. Keep dating each other in the sense of like, keep communicating and keep showing up for each other. Doesn't always have to look like a 5-star date.
Yeah, date night doesn't have to be the same to you as it is to me. For me, we're empty nesters, so we can pretty much date anytime. But when I was in your season, dating just meant sitting down and watching a movie together at night, or maybe like you said, going out to dinner. You don't have to put yourself in a box, but make sure you make priority to spend time together, whatever that looks like. It doesn't have to look like what your buddy's doing, but making each other a priority is just so important.
Absolutely. If you boil it down, man, I think the goal of a lot of people's date night is connection, time together, intimacy. But you can do that so many ways. So you're right. Don't put yourself in a box and figure out what works for you in your marriage. I mean, you might be people that like takeout better than going to dinner. So it's like whatever works best, man. Just having that conversation together to figure out what that looks like is the biggest takeaway.
Sometimes folding laundry could be date night, just doing stuff together.
Absolutely.
As every episode, we're going to highlight a Bible verse. And today, Paul and I went with Ephesians 5:25. Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her.
Christ's love for the church was selfless, sacrificial, and unconditional. As husbands, we're called to do the same. That can mean putting our needs or putting their needs ahead of our own, leading with humility and grace. It's not about control. It's about serving and protecting with the heart like Christ. And that's often easier said than done and something we have to continue to check in with on ourselves.
Yeah, it's so much easier. And I think a couple of questions listeners can think about, maybe, how am I loving my wife sacrificially, or am I loving her selflessly? How are you loving her? And where am I called to serve her better? I mean, without expecting anything in return, without keeping score. Very important. Am I loving my wife in a way that truly serves her, or a way that truly serves myself? That's something that needs to be thought about.
That's a great question, and one that we can obviously answer or ask ourselves in a journal reflection daily or weekly, just to check in to see where we're at with that. And it goes into the call to action that we have for you guys. Take one intentional action to love your wife in a way that serves her needs, not your own comfort. And the way to get there is to ask her a simple question. What makes you feel the most loved right now? Don't expect anything in return, obviously. You can do this if you know her love languages already. Perfect. Use one of those. If not, ask her that question. Or another challenge you could do too is go over each other's love languages together. And then you know what way makes her feel the most love from you.
Yeah, you can do those love language tests online. It's Gary Chapman. You can find those online, as Paul just talked about. And you know what, guys, gals, it's going to be awkward. Doing these things that we're talking about are awkward at first, but they do become easier and they become real. I mean, if you're authentic in how you're doing it and what you're saying to your wife, they're going to receive it. At least that's my experience. Just because something's hard doesn't mean it's not the thing to do. So keep that in mind.
Another one, a lesson from earlier that we could have thrown in there, we could do this on a different podcast as well. Love languages. Don't love your spouse, they're yours. Make sure you're really asking them what their love languages are, because we all have different ones. So what love feels like or looks like to me can be completely different than her. So make sure, again, we're doing that in a way to serve them with their love language.
Your love language, folks, will likely change over time. 35. This is not the same as it is at 55. We'll just stop that and won't get too deep into that.
All right, as we wrap up today, one key takeaway that we can summarize this conversation of is create your own vision of marriage. Don't think it has to look a certain way. Don't like Joey said, don't put yourself in that box. Get with your spouse, be curious, ask questions. The thing I'll leave you guys with today is be a thermostat, don't be a thermometer, meaning you can control and you can regulate, the temperature of the room. Don't come in there and allow whatever's going around to throw you off your rocker. Stay solid in your foundation and show up the way that you want to show up, and really set that temperature for your house and for your family.
That's great, Paul. And just to reaffirm, the scripture today was Ephesians 5:25. Won't repeat it, but look it up. Get in the word. Encourage anybody that's out there. If you're struggling, reach out to us. Leave us comments. You can leave an email, brotherhoodforged@gmail.com. We do care. This is not just us doing this because we're looking to get something out of it. We actually care.
Absolutely.
If this helped you in any way, share it with somebody who needs it.
And if it's not too much to ask, please leave a quick review. It helps us reach more people.
So keep showing up, keep leading with heart, and keep trusting in Jesus.
Thanks for being here with us on Brotherhood Forged. We'll see you next time.